Do you feel this way too? Are people who only drink black coffee snobs or think they're snobs?
Oh, yeah. I feel hella sophisticated.
Do you really? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. See, I wasn't messing around, Pam.
It's because people always think it's impressive. I believe you. I don't. You probably don't remember this now because you think you're the only cool black coffee drinker.
Welcome to Millennial, the home of pretend adulting and real talk. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
If you are new to the show, thank you for checking us out. And please push that follow or subscribe button like you're hitting go on your favorite coffee maker at an ungodly hour of the morning. And that way, you'll never miss an episode every Wednesday. And you can visit millennialshow.com for more about this program. So we have a great interview today. Coming up with a coffee expert from Atomic Coffee Roasters. So you will get to enjoy that in a moment. And then afterwards, we're going to talk more about coffee and summer drinks that we are looking forward to, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic. But setting aside drinks for a second, we've been stuck on a major question for listeners, and it's about the listeners. We need a name for our listeners.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I listened to some podcasts. They have some names for their listeners. It's just so cute. Like Out of the Pods, which is a Love is Blind podcast that I edit the video podcast for, they call their listeners pod besties. And I find that so adorable. And I know other shows do that too. So should we name our listeners?
That is very cute. I'm guessing sycophants isn't the vibe we're going for. We want something a little cuter. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's something you would maybe want to wear on a shirt. I don't think I'd want to wear sycophants on my shirt.
We can make it look really punk rock, though. That sounds like a good band name,
Yeah.
you know?
Exactly.
James said Millies, like millennial Millies.
Oh.
I was thinking like Millie's like a million, you know?
Yeah. Well, I guess it has a couple of meanings. Like you can feel rich when you're called a Millie.
Oh, something we'll never have. Cool.
Yeah.
They're just one in a millie.
Well, we also had the idea to call listeners elders, but that's also just like insulting low key. Like I don't want to be reminded that I'm getting old.
Yeah, the creaky
Uh-huh.
knees are enough of a reminder. We don't need to tarnish our reputations.
Uh-huh. Somebody suggested, was it you, Laura? Avocados, or was it somebody in our Discord?
It was someone in our Discord.
Must be a Weasley who reminded us we were kicking around that one. I feel like that one is really cute. Avocados. There's a clear mascot there.
I feel like we can look at some of the nicknames for millennials. Justin shared some of these in our Discord. Justin also pointed out that millennials are sometimes called echo boomers because of our close proximity to boomers, and that for most of us, they're our parents. I was triggered by this nickname, so we won't be using that one, but thank you for pointing it out. But what are some of the other ones that we have here? Riley is pointing out, why, because we're Generation Y.
And we always go, why? Why me? Why us? Why our generation? I really like this one for Michelle. It's currently getting the most votes in the Discord. Avocados.
Oh.
Avocados. It doesn't roll off the tongue too nicely, but I do love it. It's beautiful wordplay.
It's a play on words.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could definitely use it. I feel like we could use that at some point. James is saying the gaslit generation.
What's up, gaslit generation? Welcome to the pod. It has to be something where we're saying, what's up, avocados?
The why. And, I think we talked about this before, but we considered using Generation Y as like a play on words in our title originally before we landed on millennial.
I like Wise. Welcome, Wise. It's short. That rolls off the tongue. Okay, so listeners, which do you like? Maybe we should put a poll or like a little feedback form on our social media accounts. We'll rendezvous with Chloe about this. But what should we call y'all? Because we really want to give you a name, and maybe we can turn it into merchandise or whatever else. And it'd just be better to call you a name rather than listeners. It's just, why were you shaking your head and laughing? Because I'm monetizing this?
Yes, it was like, we want to give you a name so we can monetize.
Because I want to be one of those Millies, Laura. I want to be a Millie one day.
Well, also, it seems, it gives us some ideas for gifts for supporters as well. So thank you in advance for your help.
Sam is also pointing out that by calling everybody Y or Wise, it almost sounds like WISE, wise.
Oh.
So we're also complimenting the listeners.
I think that's fair. They keep us in check.
Okay, we'll work on this. Pam, do you want to tell us about today's guest?
Well, this week on the show, Andrew and I are here to interview Spencer from Atomic Coffee Roasters. They're based out of Massachusetts. And as avid coffee drinkers on the show, we've been trying to figure out a way to expand on that with a professional on Millennial for quite some time. So we're really excited to do this interview. And we hope that you all enjoy our chat here and learn a little bit more about coffee, maybe about Atomic, but also about how you can up your coffee game at home. So with that in mind, welcome to the show, Spencer. Thanks so much for hopping on with us.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
So first question for you, how did you get into the coffee business?
I was forced into it by my family. So Atomic is a family business that I'm a part of. My mom separately also had cafes growing up. So from a young age, I was behind the bar, more so usually making food, but I've definitely been around cafes and just in coffee culture kind of my whole life.
That's cool.
As a bit of an aside, how early did you actually start drinking coffee? Because my family's Mexican American, and I feel like we just grow up drinking spoonfuls of coffee, or like it's not weird for kids to have coffee and milk with like mostly milk, but some coffee. But I know that sometimes that blows people's minds because it's not really something that should be a kid's beverage. So,
yeah, I think I started really drinking coffee like in high school, but I definitely had sips of coffee growing up, especially actually with my grandfather, like working in the yard, he'd always have like iced coffee and I would like take sips that just seemed refreshing at the time. So yeah, not all the time, but definitely tried some earlier than high school.
well, switching back over to Atomic Coffee itself, how long has that been around and how long have you all had that family business going?
Yeah, so like most family businesses, a little bit complicated, but the short story is started as a cafe in the 90s. And then about 6 years ago, we kind of split. There is still an Atomic Cafe, but there's Atomic Coffee Roasters. So we supply the cafe, but we also just focus on roasting and cold brew production to be able to have coffee for a lot of different cafes in the New England, Boston area.
We actually found you guys on TikTok where you've amassed a pretty impressive following for a coffee roaster. Like we were impressed by the numbers. Have you seen an uptick in your business as a result of the social media success?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, especially nowadays, it's definitely hard to attribute it directly to what channel is bringing the traffic. But Dana, who is our social media manager, does an incredible job. She really didn't know anything about coffee when she started here, and now she could easily talk in this conversation just like I am. But yeah, between TikTok and Instagram, she does also really well with Reels. We had no followers on TikTok when she started, and I really gave her kind of an open playground of just like, do what you think is going to work, and did a lot of testing on TikTok and has really found a lot of success there. So definitely a lot more traffic to our website. I don't know where it's all coming from necessarily, but it all helps.
Speaking of just larger chains in general, for anyone who doesn't know, what's the difference between the quality you're going to get or the experience you're going to get at a place like Atomic Coffee Roasters versus at, say like a Pete's or a Starbucks or something like that?
I definitely think, it's typical to most bigger conglomerate businesses versus, a local business. I think it maybe means more to the people inside the shop itself at a local, coffee shop. But hopefully baristas, wherever they're working, they're, putting their all into it. And it's definitely a difficult job, but one that a lot of people have a passion for. So when you find a good shop, definitely frequent it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, one thing Pam and I were talking about in preparing for this interview is that independent or like the hipster coffee shops, if you will, can often be seen as more intimidating spaces to step into. especially if you're used to just stepping into larger chains. Because with the larger chains, you know what you're getting into when you go in there. You're going to find good Wi-Fi. You know the customer service you're typically going to get. You know how the rewards program works, stuff like that. So people are just naturally more comfortable with going into those. Is there anything Atomic, and I know you don't work in a coffee shop, but like, is there anything Atomic does to try and make your spaces welcoming to first timers? And I guess this question can also apply to you because you sell bagged coffee just like a Starbucks would on their website.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say, even if we don't directly have a coffee shop, I definitely run into this with just experiencing new coffees in general. Like a lot of roasters tend to alienate coffee drinkers that don't necessarily know as much, like what is a single origin, what is a blend, what is a process. So we definitely try to do what we can to make sure that our marketing, our labels, our coffees are, wide ranging so that we can kind of hit all taste profiles, but also just like be welcoming as much as possible. Like we have kind of like icon-y cartoons on our bags for blends. It's like, maybe somebody doesn't remember what the coffee was called or what country it was from, but maybe they're like, yeah, it was the one with the astronaut. And that seems kind of more inviting, as a way to come into the fold.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for a good label. It definitely catches your eye if you see it out at a coffee shop or at a food store. It's just like a book. The cover matters a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, you definitely, it starts with the branding.
So with that in mind, I mean, if somebody is kind of just starting to expand beyond the chains or like the bigger names in coffee, what's a good place to start? Or even like, what's a good like blend to order or even drink to order if you step into some of these spaces?
Yeah, that's a tough question because it definitely depends on kind of where you are and what you typically like in coffee. I would say as far as like brewing coffee at home or like what coffee to like start buying, you have to experiment a little bit. Coffee roasters don't make it super easy for you as far as like my medium roast might be another roaster's dark roast. And, the style of roasting is definitely kind of roaster to roaster. I equivalate it more to like craft beer where you kind of go with a craft brewery because you like the style of beers that they brew. And I think it's very applicable in coffee also. So we find a lot of customers that enjoy Atomic coffees and the way that we roast them. And they'll kind of stick around and try different ones. But I think that kind of finding, what style of coffee you like first, whether it is roast dependent or how you like it, either black or with, some add-ins, and then kind of like experiment from there. The funny thing about coffee is 99% of people want their coffee to taste the exact same every single time. And there's really only 1% of people that want to like have it be different every time and have each cup be an experience. So I think the tricky thing is, finding that balance between, yes, I want to experiment a little bit and like try to find something that I like actually more than what I'm drinking now, while also not like ruining the cup right here in front of me, because this cup is definitely important to my well-being.
Yeah. I have a question that just came to mind. I was very proud of myself last year. I started intermittent fasting, and part of that was drinking black coffee instead of coffee with oat milk in the morning. And I've playfully said on the show, though I'm not entirely kidding, that if you stick with just black coffee, you feel like you're more sophisticated. I've always felt that about other people who only drink black coffee. Do you feel this way too? Are people who only drink black coffee snobs or think they're snobs?
Oh yeah, I feel hella sophisticated.
Do you really? Are you serious? Oh my gosh! See, I wasn't messing around, Pam.
It's because people always think it's impressive. I believe you. I don't. You probably don't remember this now because you think you're the only cool black coffee drinker. Every time we've gone out to breakfast, I drink my coffee black. It's because I'm lactose intolerant, and most places don't have non-dairy milk. So I'm just used to drinking black coffee. That's all there is. Also, I worked as a barista for a while, and after a while, you just get sick of anything other than straight coffee. All like the novelty wears off for the mochas and the flavored lattes and all that stuff. So like, I feel you guys, but I do agree that it's a great conversation starter, and people always comment on it. Like if you say, oh no, just black, they go, wow, black coffee. What's that like? You're so mysterious.
It is bold.
Yeah. So
I think that talks a little bit to the chain kind of coffee shops as well, is that I think most of the chains push a specific type of coffee that maybe that's not the type of coffee that people would actually enjoy black. I'd like to think that I and other people drink black coffee because they like the taste of it, as opposed to putting something in it, rather than kind of settling or, toughing it out drinking black coffee. So that's definitely the goal for anybody listening to this podcast, is do a little experimenting and, find a coffee that you want to drink black more than just can tolerate,
Yeah.
We're going to get to some more specifics on like roasts and specific blends, etc. later. So I'm really glad
Definitely.
you brought that up. It's a good
Yeah.
foreshadowing moment for this interview.
Yeah. So do you enjoy trying other roasters, even though you work in the world of coffee, or has the novelty sort of worn off?
No, absolutely. We frequently buy other roasters' coffee just to try as a team. We'll do like every 3 to 4 weeks, we'll buy a coffee from just a new roaster that someone found and just try it all as a group and see what we think. And then definitely like when traveling, I base my travel around the coffee shops that are going to be in the areas, or definitely, book my hotel based on where the coffee shops are going to be.
Oh, really? That's really funny. When you're like picking good coffee shops, where do you go for reviews? Do you go to like Google Maps, Yelp, or is there like coffee sites?
That's a good question. I do go to Google reviews.
Okay.
And I think that it's not so much actually the reviews that I'm looking for, but it's more like the photos of the shop. Because I feel like you can tell a lot about a shop just from what the aesthetic is, what the menu is, and then what photos that people have taken of the drinks are.
Yeah. And what's your go-to coffee order when you're popping in one of these places?
I think if it's like I think there's like a grade. I think if it's like a B coffee shop, like B plus, like I think it's going to be solid. It might be like a cortado, which is like a latte, but less milk. It's kind of like an equal amount of espresso and milk, or just like a cold brew or iced coffee. I'm a big like iced coffee person in the afternoon. But if it's like a roaster or like a real specialty shop that I know they're into it, like I want to try the menu, honestly, which is tough with caffeine. You can't drink that many coffees, but in that situation, I'll go with like cortado if it's the morning, or something like a coffee soda, like espresso, some kind of like a syrup and soda water is like, I drink that like almost every day at our own roastery in the afternoon. So if somebody has something like that on their menu, or like espresso tonic, I'm going with that.
Cool.
Yeah. There's a place out here in San Francisco called Andy Town. Are you familiar with Andy Town? And they're
I am. Yep.
big. I'm sure that you know this. Their big like selling point is the plovers, which is an espresso with seltzer, and then this homemade whipped cream, which is incredible.
Gotcha.
It's one of my faves.
I've never heard it called that. Is that something that they?
Yeah, it's like the snowy plover is like the actual name of that concoction. And I think they have different variations now, but they named it after a bird that's just out at Ocean Beach chilling all the time. And their first shop was close to that. So anyway.
Yeah, that sounds right up my alley.
Speaking of coffee culture in general, because I think that that's kind of one of the most interesting parts about really kind of dipping your toe into this world of independent coffee shops. Have you seen the coffee culture shift a ton from, when you first started your career versus now?
Yeah, I think that just in general, there feels like there's a movement of more people wanting to know more about coffee, or try to start drinking black, or kind of level up what their drinking experience is in some way, depending on, that looks different for everyone depending on where they're at. And especially even like home brewing, I think obviously COVID changed a lot of things for everyone. But, one of the things we learned during that time is like, there's no less coffee being consumed during this time. People are just having to buy it and consume it differently. So a lot more people started brewing coffee at home than previously. So just seeing ways that people are able to brew better coffee at home, or level up their experience, at the cafe that they're going to.
Do you think social media has pushed that along a little bit? Like just like the rise of TikTok and people making entire pages dedicated to how they brew their coffee at home?
I think that social media has done that for any hobby interest that in coffee is, obviously one of those. I am totally a recipient of that with cocktails and drinking culture right now. Like I'm like real into, just making drinks at home. And so when I'm scrolling the feed, I'm just like seeing ideas. I'm seeing new things that I need to buy, even though I got to know or space in my cabinet. So I would say same exact thing with coffee. Like people are doing impressive things in coffee, and it's making those that are seeing it on social media expect more from their local coffee shops as well.
Do you think there's a Instagrammable factor too? Like I think of like Starbucks's menu. They're bright drinks. They've got some flourishes on top of it. Is it all about the look too? Because it's like, oh, this is eye catching, so let me go and order this from Starbucks or wherever else.
Yeah, whether it's the bright colors or also even just like a barista that's really good at their craft and good at latte art. The right kind of contrast between the milk and the espresso is definitely like stops some people from scrolling as well.
We want to talk a little more about coffee shops. Do you think there's such a thing as someone spending too much time in a coffee shop? And the reason I wanted to ask this question is because like sometimes you see somebody working on their laptop, they order one cup at like 9 a.m. and they're there till 5 a.m. Is that rude?
Yeah, this is definitely debatable. There needs to be some kind of equation of like, amount spent per, what's their rent for the day. Yeah, I don't know exactly what the answer for that equation is, but it's got to be there somewhere. It's got to be more than one cup for the whole day.
Yes, I agree. It's a question that just I wanted to ask because I'll spend 2 hours or 3 hours maybe, but I am keeping that in mind too. It's like, okay, I've spent 2 hours here. Time to go get a refill and pay for that refill or tip. I don't know, something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I would say just being aware of what else is happening at the shop. Like if it's lunchtime and they've got a line and people are looking for places to sit and you're occupying a booth for yourself, it might be time to move along.
With the water bottle you brought in and the snacks you brought in.
And your big modem from home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've got like 6 things charging.
Well, I'm not sure if you can answer this next question. So if you can't, that's perfectly fine. But something that we've obviously all noticed is that there's this really big pivot happening right now. More people enjoying non-dairy substitutes. And it's kind of become this hot topic in the news lately because there's this Dunkin' class action lawsuit over their non-dairy milk pricing, which is crazy. But I guess some people are just tired of spending all this money for non-dairy substitutes. And I'm wondering, as a small business for you all, like how do you justify the price you set for add-ons? And I just wanted to ask because I just feel like it's important context for people to understand when they're going into these places. And I know a lot of times customers get disgruntled over the prices, but sometimes there's a really good reason why things are pricier.
Yeah, I mean, I would say oat milk definitely reigns supreme as far as in coffee. Like it's the answer to non-dairy milk for me, at least. It's, for any barista, they're going to agree that it's going to have the best texture when steaming and mimic milk as closely as possible. To your question, as far as like cost and pricing, I mean, it definitely costs more than milk, which, is the obvious kind of factor here. I see kind of, 2 different things out there. There's some coffee shops that are more specialty that they've actually like replaced whole milk with oat milk as the like default. It's almost like instead of being like, oh, do you want oat milk? It's like, oh, it comes with oat milk unless you tell us that you want dairy milk. So I think like anything else, as it becomes more popular, as we start to zero in on like oat milk being the one instead of having 6 options that every cafe needs, coconut and oat and almond and soy and hemp and pea and all these things. Like I think that the price of that will also come down and it'll kind of just be built more into the price of the drink instead of it being an add-on. At least I hope.
First of all, I have to say I agree with you on oat milk. I used to drink almond milk with my coffee, but then it just wasn't doing it for me. And then I just happened to try oat milk one day. I was like, whoa, okay, I actually like this. I never really liked almond milk, but I really like oat milk.
Yep.
And second of all, I have to say, before this interview, I was thinking of what coffee specific shirt to wear. I completely forgot about my oat milk shirt. I should have worn the oat milk shirt because I have one from Urban Outfitters. And that's another reason, oat milk is the one, because Urban Outfitters is printing oat milk on t-shirts.
Yeah,
and
it's trendy. Yeah,
it is trendy. So let's take a quick break, and then I can use that break to go find my oat milk shirt. We'll be right back, and then we'll talk about home brewing. So talking about home brewing, is it possible to brew a great cup of coffee at home that matches what you get from a coffee shop? Is that easily possible these days?
Yeah, I would say as far as drip coffee, absolutely, and for pretty inexpensive. I would say for espresso, absolutely, but probably a lot more expensive. I think that the technology is definitely getting better over time for both aspects. I personally like to drink a pour over like a V60 or a Chemex at home for drip coffee. I do have a coffee machine. Technivore Mocha Master is a great option for like something that's going to brew great coffee and also have like a pot for you, like someone would be accustomed to. And then espresso machines, like anything else, there's a whole range from, probably $300 or $400 to, I don't know, $8,000. So you can pick somewhere in the middle. But that one I think is, the more that you spend, the closer you're going to get to that cafe style drink as far as espresso goes. You also need the skills and the knowledge to make it too, though. So you can't just buy the $6,000 machine and it's going to still make it perfectly for you.
Yeah, I still have nightmares about dialing in espresso from my coffee shop days. That's the other thing too. You can make a shot of espresso, but it doesn't mean it's going to taste great, which is an issue.
It's always the days that I'm the most in the rush too, that I have to dial in espresso completely from scratch when I want to drink.
Yeah.
I'm like,
and then it's like way too sour, way too bitter. Yeah. And you're like, oh no.
Can I ask briefly, since I'm the only person who doesn't do this, what is dialing in espresso? What does that mean?
There are different factors that lead to you how you're brewing coffee or a shot of espresso. Mainly, especially when brewing espresso, it's really about the grind size. So like if you're grinding it too fine, it's going to take too long of a shot, and it's going to be overly bitter. If you're too coarse, it's going to be too fast of a shot. It's going to be too sour. So it's trying to like find where to set that grinder to make sure that your timing for the ratio of the shot is kind of just right to hit those notes that you want to. And as any barista would know, that also changes day after day, or even kind of like based on other factors happening. Like, is it getting warmer in the shop? If you're cranking it nonstop, like that's heating up the grinder, which is going to heat up the coffee beans a little, so it's not kind of like a set it and we're good for a week. It's almost like continuously monitoring to see how it's changing throughout the day, and just kind of like tweaking as needed.
Mm-hmm. Throughout just your time on the bar too, because the place I worked at, we would do bar shifts at 2-hour increments. So just throughout those 2 hours, you're wanting to taste the espresso shots, because you will get people that come in and they're going to ask for, they want the espresso shot. They want the full setup with, the shot of espresso. You give them a little spoon and a little chaser of seltzer water so that they can cleanse their palate. And they'll be like, this is not good. This is too sour. This doesn't taste right. And so then it's up to you to like fix that quick, but you don't want to be doing that if the drinks are piling up. So that's why they encourage you to like taste and spit if you've had too much caffeine and stuff like that. But yeah. And then like, I would also just add on to what you explained, Spencer, that like, so like every coffee shop will have like parameters. So they'll say you need to use like this many grams of coffee and you have to dial it in, and the shot should take about, this many seconds to pull, and you're looking for a specific ounce, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But then sometimes it's like, but it actually tastes better like 10 seconds off. So like you could keep it that way, but that also kind of means that you're probably going to have to dial it back in again sooner. So
Yeah.
it's a
Weighed in
science.
versus weighed out in a certain amount of time is kind of what you're looking for as a baseline before actually tasting it.
This really is a science. I
Mhm.
think this
And a
gets in.
craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of miss it sometimes, like, but mostly just I miss playing on the machine, you know? Like, so if I could just do that without actually like talking to people and having people yell at me, it'd be great.
Two things. I'm impressed with your barista experience because some people
Thank
say,
you.
yeah, I worked in a coffee shop and wouldn't know what dialing in even is. Kudos there. And then secondly,
Thank you.
one thing that I did think of when you were talking too is coffee roasting is the same way. It's a very,
Mhm.
it's very much a mashup of science and craft. There's a lot of numbers you can look at. There's a lot of like, how did I get here and what were the chemical reactions? But also there's a lot of like tasting and feel for what the machine is doing. So
Yeah.
it's coffee in general is just a great mix of science and craft.
As an aside, and then we'll get back to like the actual questions. I was telling Andrew that I really needed help, like coming up with questions for this because the stuff I wanted to ask was like stuff nobody cares about. Like I wanted to ask about cupping and if you guys did cupping and like how that all works, but that all kind of feeds into what you were saying in terms of like roasting and tasting and all that stuff. And then like I also remember that we had like this machine where you would have to like they wanted us to put like drops of the drip in to measure the level of I think like the porosity. Right. Is that right? Or like how much the coffee was absorbing?
It'd be like a TDS meter. Yeah. So
TDS, that's the one. We did TDS readings.
Wow. Yeah. So you worked at a legit shop. Yeah. It measures like the total dissolved solids, which is what TDS is. So it's literally like
more
how
science
much
for you, Andrew.
it's literally like how much coffee is in this water. And honestly, one buzzword that might make a coffee professional a little crazy is like strong. Like, can I get strong coffee? And that would be my definition of strong is like how much coffee is concentrated in the water. Like if you drink drip coffee, it's not as strong as espresso. There's more concentrated coffee in that small amount of water than your cup of drip coffee. And if your listeners want, they're like, yeah, no, we want that. We want those questions. We want to know what cupping is. We can just do an episode 2 later.
Oh, that's great. I'm so happy to know you're down. Well, I see that Andrew very nicely highlighted this next question because I have no idea where we were. To get back to actually like home brewing in a way that people can actually do without fancy machinery or TDS machines, all that good stuff. What are some affordable ways that anyone can kind of up their home brewing game?
I would say, the more affordable brewing devices specifically are more manual. And they actually typically will make a better cup of coffee, but they tend to require more trial and error or more knowledge or more, looking through Instagram reels to see what people are doing. Yeah, to me, it's like kind of got to just see where you're at in your own brewing. But my immediate like recommendations would be like a good grinder. Like that's first and foremost. The grinder matters maybe more than the brewer itself. You can brew some pretty good coffee with a great grinder and some, decent coffee. You can also completely ruin great coffee with a terrible grinder. So if I was going to spend up on anything, it would be the grinder. And then from there, there's a lot of good options out there, whether it's Chemex V60 kind of manual brewing or, you can get a good brewer that's going to brew something to SCA standards, which is Specialty Coffee Association, for like, I don't know, $80, $100.
What about the temperature of the water? This is a big one here. Does that make a big difference in terms of how people are brewing at home?
Yes, you do not want the water to be boiling. Just like we were talking and really getting into it with espresso, it's another variable and it's another factor. And I think that's what coffee is it's a bunch of variables coming together. And you can tweak each of those variables and come out with a different result. And I kind of look at like a hierarchy of variables. I think grind is kind of the first one that I would be looking at, and water temperature is probably like 2 or 3. People that really get into it will do different temperatures for different coffees because they're tasting a difference. Typically when I'm brewing coffee at home, I'm staying at like 203, 204. That's kind of like the range that I will typically brew coffee at.
Okay. I was going to ask you what number specifically because I recently bought an electric kettle and I've been cooking to 205. So I think I need to turn it down. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, that's
right.
good too. Yeah. Did you get is it a fellow?
No, it's something from Amazon. I don't know. Amazon recommends that one.
Got it.
Now every morning I'm going to look at 205 and I'm going to be like, but Spencer does 203, 204. So I'm just turn it down.
Yeah. My electric kettle has been on overdrive lately because I'm using it for brewing. I'm also using it for heating up bottles for my 5-week-old. So it's a good investment overall.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
First child?
My second child. Yep.
Second child. Okay.
2 boys. Yep.
Oh, okay. Cool.
That's so fun. So why does it make a difference as to how you grind your beans? Kind of circling back to how you said that was probably one of the most important things that anybody can do to up their game at home.
Yeah. So 2 things. It's really about the coarseness of the coffee. So the coarser that the coffee is ground, the faster water is going to come through. And then the less total dissolved solids, as we are going back to the TDS, are going to come through in that cup. The finer that it's ground, the more coffee it's going to pick up as the water goes through. So just finding the right grind setting for the brewing method that you're using is really important. And then beyond that, if possible, get a burr grinder, BURR, versus a blade grinder. Just as much as the size of the grind is important, like the uniformity of the grind. So a burr grinder is essentially going to make all of the grind particles the same size. So you get a nice even extraction versus if you're using a blade grinder, it's just chopping the beans up and they're all different sizes. So you're really not getting as even of a brew, as well as you don't really have a setting that you can be like, I have it on 18. And then tomorrow morning when I want to make coffee, I'm going to set it to 18 again. You're kind of going like, yeah, I press it down for 10 seconds and that's usually good. So just cutting down on the variables and making as many things, similar as past good experiences is what you're looking for.
It's good to hear. I have a KitchenAid burr grinder and I like it for my French press. I've been doing French presses for, probably around 10 years now. And I went from Keurig to French press. So it was a major step up. And
moving on up.
But you really can notice the difference. And now I go home to my parents' place and they have a French press for me there now, but I used to do the Keurig at their place because that's what they do. And oh my God, it tastes like it's just water to me there compared to the French press. It's worlds different. Is there a general rule of thumb in terms of the amount of coffee that you should be using per ounce of water, or do you really just measure it? You kind of like work it out to your own taste preferences?
Yeah, it definitely, it can fluctuate a little bit based on how you're brewing, but I think a good rule of thumb is always like a 1:16 ratio, and then you go from there. I am the type of person that is at home with a scale, and I'm weighing the coffee and I'm weighing the water, and that's really the best. That's really the best way that you're going to know the 2 variables that are going in, because if you're using a scoop of coffee and then you're using a certain amount of ounces of water, I guess you could keep that consistent if you're using it the same each time, but it's harder to make adjustments to be like, yeah, I think that was a little, too strong or too bitter. Like it's hard to make kind of like precise adjustments from there to find that cup of coffee that we all want to drink black at some point because we like it black, right?
Because we're sophisticated. We all want to be sophisticated.
We're elite above everyone else.
So you said the 1:16 ratio. You're talking ounces?
1:16 ratio. I'm talking whatever way that you're able to weigh it. Yeah. So like when I'm brewing a pour over, I'm in grams, but like it'd be 1 part coffee to 16 parts water. And you weigh the coffee and you weigh the water. That's a good usually a pretty good ratio to stuck with.
Okay. So I'm using a 34-ounce I'm not going to ask you to math here, but I'm using a 34-ounce French press, and then I use like 4 scoops of beans, and that's the taste profile that I like most.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more if I'm feeling extra tired.
That's the thing. I mean, if you like it, that's what matters most.
The nice thing is when you, and I'm sure Spencer will back you up here, when you buy your coffee from local places that also
Yeah.
roast, you can ask them and they will tell you exactly how they make it in the shop. I know that we were really forthcoming with that information at the place I worked at. You know, if you want to know how much we use in a French press, I'll tell you. If you want to know how much we put in a pour over, I'll tell you. It's not a secret.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, going back to try to meet people where they're at. We've tried to become more approachable, and people on our email list, like we send out emails with each new coffee that we come out with like, hey, here's how we're liking this coffee, and kind of like a step-by-step like guide to a couple different ways of brewing it, as if you have no idea, where to start.
Yeah. It can be intimidating because you mentioned weighing your beans and the water. Like I've seen this on YouTube and TikTok and wherever else. And it's just intimidating because you're like, oh man, I must be doing it wrong because I'm not taking the time to weigh everything out.
Yeah, as long as you enjoy it, you're not doing it wrong.
Yeah, okay.
After a while, you
fair.
can also just eyeball it. That's what I do. Like I know what 30 grams looks like in the same cup I use, or what it looks like in my pour over. So for the uninitiated, can you talk us through the difference between single origin coffees versus blends?
Yes.
And also why the prices differ per pound?
Yes. So typically a blend is a mixture of more than one coffee. So it could be 2 coffees, 3 coffees, and those coffees are either mixed before they're roasted, so they're roasted the same, or it could be 2 different coffees that are roasted separately, a light roast and a dark roast, and then mixed together after the fact. But basically, it is a combination of coffees that the roaster is using to find some kind of a flavor profile. It's a good way of keeping that flavor profile consistent over time. Coffee is a crop and it changes just like any other seasonal crop. So being able to kind of use different coffees to find that same taste is what they're going for. Like I said, most people want coffee to taste the exact same every single time they have it. So this allows for some consistency for the roaster. A single origin is a couple of different definitions, but basically a coffee that's coming from one place. So depending on what the label says, it could be from the same country, from the same region in that country, from the same farm, from the same lot within that farm. So it can kind of go deeper, but overall it's one coffee from one place. And I think that the prices, as you alluded to, usually you're going to see single origins be more expensive than blends. I think there's a stereotype that like blends are like lower quality coffees. That's not necessarily true. They can be, but I think single origins are usually more expensive because if a coffee is costing the roaster more, they're probably not going to hide it in the blend. Like they want to, showcase kind of the different unique characteristics that coffee has. So generally, it's costing the roaster more money because the farmer put more time and energy and effort into it. And it kind of works its way up.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Now, talking about roast levels, what are the basic differences between light, medium, and dark?
I was saying this can be confusing for people trying to navigate their way of like what they like, because there's no, just like we were talking about TDS, like that's a very standard measurement. There's no like, this is a unified board of coffee that tells people what is light and what is medium and what is dark. It's very up to the roaster to decide. And there are some coffee roasters that, our light roast is like their dark roast. And there's some coffee roasters that their light roast is our dark roast. So
Yeah.
it could definitely be challenging. Some general rules of thumb, like if there's any oil on the coffee, it's a dark roast. That's gone through a process in roasting called second crack. Once it's past second crack, there's oil on the beans. And I think anyone would agree that that's a dark roast. I'm generalizing, but usually a dark roast is more bitter. The darker a roast is, the more you're really tasting the roasting process more so than the coffee itself. So that's why a lot of like specialty roasters tend to roast things lighter, because there's more differences in how, if you tasted 5 light roast coffees, they're all from different places, different types of coffee, versus 5 dark roast coffees the same way, you're definitely going to taste more variety and differences in the light roast than the dark roast.
Oh, okay. That is good to know. So to start wrapping this up, we wanted to actually get some recommendations from Atomic Coffee based on our own taste profiles, right, Pam?
Yeah, we just thought this would be a fun little game to kind of play with you to highlight some of the roasts that you have on there. And also selfishly, because Andrew and I were looking and we were like, we can't pick which one to buy. So we'll just have the expert recommend some good stuff and we'll all be caffeinated up. So do you want to kick things off, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like I have settled on a sort of like chocolate, caramel, nutty note flavor. So what would you recommend there from Atomic?
I think those are like literally the taste notes on the bag of our house blend.
Okay.
So if you came to me and emailed and were like, hey, this is what I like, I would probably say start with house blend.
Okay.
Either that or we have like a medium roast bundle that is house blend, Rocketeer, and I think Space Cadet. And those are all going to be, I think house blend's going to be right in the middle. And each of those other two coffees are kind of going to be like on either side of it in terms of like roast level. And I think that would be probably a good place to start.
Okay. I'm also looking at this diesel one. It says smoky, baker's chocolate, and dry finish. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's our darkest roast that we do. So
okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I tend to gravitate more towards like juicy, fruit forward coffees with some chocolate notes, but it's not really necessary. The fruity element is always interesting to me if I read that on a menu.
Do you like fruity like stone fruit, or do you like fruity like a naturally processed coffee like fruit bomb?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think stone fruit. I think stone fruit would catch my eye if I saw that.
Cool. Yeah, I would say any coffees that we carry from Colombia, I would probably be my recommendation first. Like we have a Colombia Cauca that is a coffee we have all the time. We also have like a limited release single origin right now from Colombia. So that's what I've been drinking since we came out with it. Those are kind of the coffees that I gravitate towards also. But for those looking for something like real light and funky and fruit forward, we're about to have an Ethiopian natural in a week or two, which those are the coffees that like really are, if you've tasted coffee, but you have no idea what I'm talking about in terms of like, what does really fruity mean? Like an Ethiopian natural is the place to start. And you'd be like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah. That's usually if I don't know what to get and I see that there's a single origin on like a pour over menu from Ethiopia, I'll just be like, I'll take that. That sounds great because that's
definitely
pretty safe. So
yeah.
Laura's not here. She's our third co-host, but she did submit some flavor profiles. So she likes chocolate and molasses. So where would you point somebody that, kind of vibes with that?
I'm thinking Black Velvet there. That's a dark roast of ours as well. One of our more popular coffees, not going to be a lot of oil. So, when we talk about kind of where we fall in the roast level, it's not going to be overly dark, but definitely going to be enough to bring forth, those chocolate, molasses, brown sugar, graham crackery kind of notes that I think she would like.
That sounds really good too.
Sound great. Yeah, just looking at your different bags here on the site, I mean, there's so many great options. Like my mouth is watering just looking at some of these notes. So Spencer, we know we've held you for a long time today, so thank you so much for your time. And this has been so insightful and interesting. And we really wanted to have you on because coffee is a part of so many of our everyday lives. It's like such a big part of it, even though we have it every day. So maybe we don't really think about it too much because it is every day. But this is another great reason why we wanted to talk about it with you. Where can our listeners find Atomic Coffee online? And if there's any like social media sites you want to promote or anything like that, please do let us know.
Yeah, so our website, like you were just talking about, checking out all the bags that look good, is atomicroastery.com. Or if you do drinkatomic.com, it's easier to spell. That'll redirect you there. And on social media, like you mentioned, TikTok or Instagram, we are at Atomic Coffee Roasters with one C in the middle. So Atomic from the C, the end of Atomic to the beginning of Coffee Roasters, there's one C. If you type in Atomic, I think we'll come up.
Yeah. And listeners, we'll have links in the show notes too, and we'll tag you on social media as well. So thank you so much, Spencer, for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the conversation and having me on.
Listeners, please check out Atomic Coffee Roasters. We'll have a link in the show notes. Right after we got out of the interview, I ordered 3 bags of coffee and one of their glasses because it looked really cool.
The merch looks really cute.
Yeah. Well, and they got me with the, if you spend $50, you'll get free shipping. I was like, oh, I'm already so close. I'm throwing in the glass.
Girl math.
Right, exactly. I cannot wait to try this coffee. Laura, you haven't had a chance to hear the interview yet, but he did make a recommendation for you as well based on the notes that. Yeah.
And yours sounded so good. I think I'm going to order yours too.
They all sound good.
I'm so excited. I put my notes in and I was like, I don't know if this is relevant since I'm not going to be there for the interview, but I'm going to put them in there anyway.
We made sure that you got your recommendation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to continue this conversation a little bit longer. Laura, when you go to a coffee shop, what do you typically order out of curiosity?
You know, I'm pretty, I don't want to say basic because I feel like basic makes it sound like I'm getting like PSLs every time I go. When I say basic, I'm just like bare bones. Like I want my coffee and I usually want coconut milk in it or oat milk in it and like maybe a couple of pumps of flavor and that's it. I don't want whipped cream on my coffee. Like keep that shit away from me. It's coffee, not dessert. I don't want tons of syrups or other additions. As
established in the interview, I only drink black coffee. Though in the afternoons, like Spencer was saying, I will get a cold brew or an iced coffee from time to time, but not very often. Maybe during the summer, but that's about it. So my picks are pretty straightforward as well.
If it's a chain, I will just go with like a cold brew and a splash of oat milk. Usually because, I just want to make sure my stomach has some coating because I'm probably prioritizing coffee over food for a few hours. But yeah, that's just my go-to when because it's really hard to mess it up too.
Yeah.
And I find that most chains, I don't really care for their drip coffee. So I'll just go default to cold brew with a splash of oat milk.
Yeah. I like to also keep it simple, just kind of from a health perspective, like all the sugar and all the other chemicals that are in these syrups. It disturbs me.
Are you never like tempted to treat yourself when you go to like a local place that's a little bit more fun? Not even if they make their own syrups in house. Sometimes they get me like that. Like if they make their own like lavender syrup, it's like, oh, I got to try that. Like maybe I'll ask for a little bit of that.
No, you know what's always worked in my favor since I was in elementary school? I have very plain tastes. I used to get a hot dog in elementary school without ketchup or mustard. I just wanted a dry hot dog. Pizza, plain. I've never wanted like a lot of extra things on stuff. So
interesting.
I
save money.
Yeah, exactly. I could barely eat French fries when I was a kid. I didn't even like French fries. Like,
whoa,
yeah, saving money.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about you, Laura? Like if you're not going to a Dunkin' or a Starbucks?
I'll be a little bit adventurous, but it's usually being adventurous around the boldness of the coffee itself. Like I will definitely go for, I'm a dark brew girly anyway. But I will definitely hit up something even a little more intense than that with more natural flavor profiles added to it. Kind of like you were saying, like when you're talking about the lavender, but if I see a place that has like their own like almond syrup, for example, that's a flavor that I would really like to add to it. Usually when I'm going to like a craft coffee house, the last thing I want is something super sweet because again, that's not what I'm there for. Coffee's not dessert to me.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I land. How about, Pam, you mentioned drip coffees and how a lot of drip coffees don't differ chain to chain. However, and you got me into this chain I'm about to bring up, Phil's Coffee, Phil's with a Z.
Yeah.
Primarily on the West Coast, not in Vegas, unfortunately, yet. They have many different drip coffees. They are all pour overs when you order a drip there, which is different than like Starbucks or Dunkin'. And they have some great breakfast food there as well. Pat's a big fan of the iced coffee drinks there. I love Phil's. I think that might be my favorite coffee chain in America.
Yeah. But see, that's different because that's a pour over. So like if I'm going to a small coffee shop, then my order is always a pour over. So I get to pick like the flavor profiles, to Laura's point about maybe being adventurous for a drip, and then a cortado because I want to try the espresso. But that's like a very small latte. That's like a 5-ounce latte, a cortado.
So this was brought up in the interview today too. I'm embarrassed to admit, because you just brought it up again, I had never heard of a cortado, but I'm going to have to try this.
Yeah. So sometimes you'll see it on the menu as a Gibraltar, and it's a regional difference in terms of the name. But you can basically go to any small coffee shop and just say like, oh, can you make a cortado? And they will be able to make one for you. So so it's a 5-ounce drink. It's like the normal shot of espresso, and then the rest of it is milk. So it's almost half and half. And it's just really nice. And like, if you just want a little treat, that's enough for me, especially because, you know, sometimes they're using like really good almond milk or really good oat milk, depending on whatever. So you kind of get like that little hit, but it's not as sweet as, you know, a latte, which is mostly milk. So yeah, I would definitely recommend trying a cortado if you're like us and don't like sweet coffee, but you want like a little bit more milk and you like the texture of steamed milk.
Favorite chains?
We all know I'm a Pete's girl.
Pete's.
Yeah, Pam turned me into a Pete's girl. She talked about it so much on the show that we...
Oh my gosh.
No, like in a good way, because...
Okay, that's
You're
good.
an influencer, Pam.
Yes,
Own it.
because
Wow, an influencer.
Yes, because you are like my coffee friend. Like if I ever need to bug anybody about my coffee questions, you're the person I'm going to. So you mentioned Pete's so many times that we ended up picking it up from Publix one time and loved it. And now it is like our house coffee. Like we'll have other types of coffee if we're gifted things or if we get something fancy. But in general, what we've got on the counter is Pete's.
This is good to know. I can go visit Laura and Mark and I don't have to worry about drinking bad coffee.
Yes, your coffee will be consistent.
So outside of coffee, thought we should look ahead to summer a little bit. What drinks are we looking forward to this summer, caffeinated or not? I'll start with the alcoholic picks. I during the winter I lose interest, but during the summer, the hard seltzers still hit for me, and I still prefer Truly over the White Claws. And if you go into a food store or a liquor store these days, you see so many different types of hard seltzers, both different companies and different flavors, and it's a bit annoying because they're trying all these different things, and it's just overwhelming, the number of options. I guess they're partly doing it to try and eat up as much shelf space as possible, so you pay attention to them versus other brands. But I love the Truly party packs, and I love the watermelon or grapefruit flavors. They are just summer to me, and they have been for several years. So I'm looking forward to getting more back into my hard seltzer kick.
I don't like the malt liquor that a lot of these hard seltzers use, which is why I'm not a big White Claw fan. Like the aftertaste is just not great.
And they make me feel bloated.
Yeah. So in terms of like just canned ready to drink, I stick with anything that's a vodka soda that doesn't have like any malt in it. And I really like the High Noon, and specifically the pineapple High Noon vodka soda. I think that's just like such a nice little summer drink because pineapple is very tropical and it has a good aftertaste. I mean, I'll probably I kind of vibe with any of the High Noon flavors for their vodka sodas, but the pineapple one is especially nice.
Those are super popular, the High Noons.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen, and I guess these might be new this year, Truly now has a vodka soda?
No, I've actually never tried Truly because I thought that they had malt liquor in there. So I usually just pick up like the High Noon variety pack, to be honest with you, from Costco.
Well,
but
the hard seltzers do have the malts, but I'm looking at the box for Truly vodka soda and it doesn't say malt on it.
Okay.
So I don't know if you wanted to try something new.
Yeah. No, I definitely would.
Honestly, I just love the look of the Truly cans more than anything.
The High Noon is like, it's also like, it's kind of like a Red Bull can. So it just looks nicer. It's easier to hold.
As are the Trulies and the White Claws.
Nice.
So I'll be honest, I don't drink that many alcoholic beverages anymore. It's not that I don't like them. It's just, I don't know. Like I drink them to enjoy them. 10 years ago, that's not why I was drinking them. So, we've matured. In general, though, during the summer months, if we're talking about a mixed drink, G&Ts with lime all the way. It's my favorite during the hot months. But I will say a couple of beers that are kind of my permanent beers of the summer are Red Stripe and Imperial. These are just the beers that I associate with being on the beach on a hot day when it's really breezy and your toes are in the sand and the waves are crashing in the background. So I'm already getting ready for beach mode, and I'm not even going to the beach anytime soon. But this is what I will be drinking when I'm out there. It's what I'm always drinking when I'm out there.
How about non-alcoholic drinks? And I think I recommended these on the show a few weeks ago. Pat and I got into these over the road trip. Laura, I know you're a big fan of these, the Celsius energy drinks. They're only 10 calories. There's no added sugar. There are vitamins in them. They taste amazing. Every single flavor is better than the next. And they really blew up over the last year or two. They've been around for a while, but they went viral, if you will, over the last couple of years, I think. That's at least when I started noticing them. But they are great for a little afternoon pick-me-up. That said, I do still love dry seltzers very much. The LaCroix, the Costco ripoff, the Kirkland ripoff. And I would strongly encourage people who like soda to give the dry seltzers a try. There is that difficult adjustment period if you're trying to wean yourself off of soda, but it's like my relationship with coffee. This didn't come up in the interview today, but I used to love sugar and milk in my coffee. And then I got rid of the sugar, I got rid of the Splenda, and there was this multi-week period where it was painful, but then once you get over that hump, you never look back. I can't imagine adding sugar now. Same thing with going from soda to dry seltzers. Once you get used to that dry, plain, ketchupless hot dog taste, you don't mind it one bit. And I find them very refreshing.
I mean, I don't know. When I'm drinking non-alcoholic drinks and it's not water, it's usually Diet Coke. So, I mean, there's nothing new about that. It's just me. That's just me being me. I will admit, though, I think this is a first for me to admit, in the public facing version of the show. Mark has started getting the Rest in Peach flavor of Liquid Death. And I have to admit, there have been a couple of times where I got curious and I was like, can I have one of those? I just want to see what they're like. And they're actually pretty good. And I was really mad that they were so good because I don't know if we're cool talking about this, but Liquid Death tried to advertise on this show many years ago. And I was like, no, fuck the whole bottled and canned water industry. We're not advertising them on this show. And I still feel that way, but I have to admit, their water is pretty damn good.
At least it's flavored though, right?
Yeah.
What you were talking about. So that's a little bit better than just plain water in a
right.
can, which yeah.
Yeah, and aluminum cans, they're at least recyclable. Highly recyclable.
Yeah.
So there's that.
I know. But I have a real problem with companies being like, hey, we're going to take this resource from the earth and package it and then sell it to people. I'm sorry, water should not be a commodity. Like you shouldn't be able to sell water. Water is naturally occurring.
Right. No, that's fair. Why did Liquid Death take off, even the plain stuff? I'm glad you brought this up because I see people drinking the plain
good
ones.
advertising.
Yeah. Their marketing
And
was
is
on
it
point.
And is it the taste of water in a can? Because we know soda can differ.
It looks cool. It looks like you're drinking an energy drink. It doesn't look like water. And also, like, they really sold the sustainability aspect too with regards to the aluminum can. Like, they were really smart.
Yeah, and I think they initially marketed to people who maybe wanted to be able to get a non-alcoholic beverage at a bar without it immediately looking like it was non-alcoholic. So I think that was, I mean, there is definitely an audience for that, right? Like there are plenty of people who, for whatever reason, maybe want to go to a happy hour, but not get an alcoholic beverage, and you could still look cool with your Liquid Death.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, the non-alcoholic beers have really taken off over the last few years. In fact, I mentioned the hard seltzers. There's now non-alcoholic hard seltzer from Truly, maybe White Claw too, which is just dry seltzer. It's like, yo, just buy the dry seltzer.
Non-alcoholic drink, Spindrift. I like grapefruit or the raspberry lime. And then if I want a sweet treat in the summer, going back to coffee, Pete's makes a coconut black tie, which is just like cold brew with a little bit of condensed milk and a little bit of coconut syrup. And it's so good. So if I'm ever craving anything a little bit sweeter, I'll gravitate towards that.
Pam, did you hear the exciting news about Spindrift?
They're making the spiked Spindrift.
Well, no. They still don't sell those here, and they're so good.
They don't sell them near me either. I have never tried them. What is the exciting news about Spindrift?
But they are in California, the spiked ones. You gotta look around more.
Them.
Oh man,
I haven't seen them.
No, the exciting news is that Spindrift is about to go on sale again at Costco.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Actually, I'm going on Friday. $5 off. It's very exciting.
It is. And I will buy 3 boxes when they go on sale, and that'll cover me until the next time they are on sale, because a case of Spindrift is like, I want to say $20 normally, which is a lot.
No. Yeah. It's gone up because of inflation. And they used to put the raspberry lime in the variety pack, and now they don't. They just have the lime, which feels so dumb because they have the lemon. Anyway.
No, I'm glad you bring this up because I hated that raspberry lime. And now that
you didn't like it?
Nope. So now that they have lemon, grapefruit, and lime. That's the perfect
all citrus.
That's the perfect trio for me. Yep. I'm very happy with that.
I'm so sad to find out that you didn't like the raspberry lime flavor. I loved that.
I would always give those to Pat.
This is why Pat and I are besties.
They have an iced tea one too that he's really into.
Oh, I never tried that.
Spindrift is great. Everybody should try that because it's like it's a nice middle ground between a dry seltzer and, like, let's say what's the green tea company?
Arizona?
Arizona.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Love Arizona.
It's sweeter than a dry seltzer, but not as sweet as an Arizona iced tea. And no added sugar, I don't think.
No, it's just the natural juice from those things. So the sugar and the calories are coming from that. But yeah, it's really nice. Again, like if you're trying to cut back on the actual stuff that's bad for you, it's not a bad way to transition. And it's slightly less carbonated than the LaCroix variety of seltzer. So that's a little bit nicer too if you kind of have an aversion to super carbonated sparkling water.
Oh, and to tie this full circle, James just reminded us in our Discord that Arizona iced tea is now doing a hard seltzer because no brand is safe from the hard seltzer craze.
I feel like I might fuck with that on a really hot day at the beach. If it's like, coming straight out of the cooler, that's when you want something a little sweeter,
Yeah.
I wonder if they do that for their Arnold Palmer.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. Do you guys know the Mexican soda brand Jarritos?
Yeah.
They always have them at taco. They have an alcoholic version called Cantaritos. And they're so good.
I don't think I've seen those.
They're really good. It is malt based, but you can't taste the malt and there's no malt aftertaste. I would highly recommend those.
What's your favorite flavor, Pam?
Actually, honestly, all of them are really good, but my family and I tried all of them. We really liked the pineapple and the tamarind.
Okay. Yeah, pineapple is my favorite, just of the regular flavors. So I'm going to have to see if I can track down some of these alcoholic versions. All right. Well, coming up in After Dark, we had so much fun reviving Surprise Bitch last week that we decided we want to do it again this week. So we're going to be calling more of our listeners. This time we're coming up with a different set of questions because we felt like being a little extra unhinged. So get ready. We're going to call with questions like, what's something you hate about the show? If Laura and Pam...
We're really asking for it.
If Laura and Pam were drowning and you could only pull one out of the water, who would you save? And then, of course, fuck, marry, kill Andrew, Laura, or Pam. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope y'all are ready to get put on the spot. And I hope you're going to be honest with us. Because we want that. We want the sincerity.
Yeah, exactly. We won't be mad. We'll just cry about it in therapy later.
Well, how's that different than normal?
That's true.
The show will fall apart after today's After Dark, I think. We're trying to split us up.
After Dark is part of Mega Millennial, which you can get every week when you're a patron or Apple Podcast subscriber. Plus, it's ad-free. Visit patreon.com/millennial to pledge today. Spotify users will find a banner at the top of our show page, or Apple Podcast users can tap into the show and subscribe.
And we also have other Patreon benefits like live stream access, our monthly Zoom hangout, a new physical gift every year, and lots more. You can get started by going into Apple Podcasts or Patreon and activating that 7-day free trial. You can also get an annual subscription, which will give you a little discount. And one last way to financially support us is by going to mugglemillennial.etsy.com, and you can grab a Millennial Adulting Planner or a Millennial 2020 t-shirt with 2020 on fire. It's pretty cool. Time for recommendations. What do you got this week, Laura?
So just a little PSA for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. We are getting into the summer months, and it's really important to remember to protect your pets. So that means if you're walking the dog in the middle of the afternoon, the sidewalk, the asphalt, it's all really fucking hot. So you need to try and avoid walking with them with their bare paws on that, because it can really burn them. Same for kitty cats, although I think cats are a little more self-sufficient in that regard. When it comes to things like leaving your animals in the car unattended, you need to, hopefully make sure you can keep the car and the AC on so that I don't come and break in your windows to release your animal, because I will. So just have an awareness of the effects that heat can have on our furry friends this summer, please and thank you.
Pam, if Laura and Canella are both trapped in a car and you can only pull out one.
Oh my God.
I'm kidding.
Save Canella.
Well, I was going to say, I know Laura would want me to save Canella first. So I would grab her first and then I'd run back for Laura.
No, Laura must die.
Well, maybe she'll die on my run back, but at least I would try.
Okay.
That's all that matters. Just try your best.
Sorry, Laura, I tried.
Try your best. I just know she's not going to come back to haunt me later, because I'll have saved Canella. So it's fine.
Oh,
right.
Well reasoned.
Exactly.
I want to recommend the Vacation Super Spritz Face Mist if you're looking for a sunscreen that you can reapply daily and over makeup. I do really like the Vacation line in general, and also like the scent just reminds me of it's very summer nostalgia. I don't know how else to say it. It kind of reminds me of old school Coppertone. From the 90s that you kind of grew up with. Coppertone doesn't really smell the same, but that's a very nostalgic smell for me. And so it's very subtly scented, and the smell kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, I really like this. I've been looking for a replacement for my sunscreen to reapply over makeup since the spray I was using before reformulated, and I don't really like the new version anymore. So I've been using this for a few months and I really like it. So I would check it out if you're looking for something similar to add to your arsenal. And like wear sunscreen in general, PSA, every year, every day.
Related to our coffee discussion today, about a couple of months ago, I purchased a smart electric kettle. And the reason I decided to upgrade to a smart one, a Wi-Fi connected one, is because when I wake up in the morning, I like to get the kettle going before I get out of bed because warming up the water takes several minutes. And I'm a busy guy. I don't have time for that. I hate sitting there waiting for the water to heat up. So before I get out of bed, I hit start and then it can get going as I get out of bed and wash my face and all that. And you can also set a timer on it, of course. You can see exactly the temperature it's at. There's also a keep warm setting. The one I bought was the Govee Life brand electric smart kettle, Goveelife. I got the $90 one. There's also a $50 one. I like this more expensive one because it has a little digital panel on it so you can see the temperature and if it's scheduled to activate at a certain time. It's also Alexa enabled, so if you're super lazy, I need to set this part up. Instead of opening my phone in the morning, I can just go, Alexa, activate the water kettle, and it'll get going for me. So this has really been one of those quality of life improvements I'm so happy to have, especially the keep warm setting too, so I don't have to rush down before the water temperature starts to fall. Well, that's it for this week's episode. Make sure you are following the show in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Also, be sure to give us your listener name recommendations and your votes. We'll have more info on that coming soon. And you can leave us a review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
To stay in touch with us, email millennialshow@gmail.com or visit millennialshow.com. While there, you'll also find our social media links, and Spotify users can also leave feedback directly within an episode.
Before we wrap up, Shane said most of these features have existed in coffee makers for 30 years at least. Yeah, okay. But I've been using a classic electric kettle that I have to get my ass downstairs to and turn on. Sorry, I just entered the future, okay? I'm excited about it. After Dark starts in a moment for patrons and Apple Podcast subscribers. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.